If there's anyone here I haven't offended yet, there's still early. There's hope. Oh, jeez. I want to share my experience with what scared me the most in Alcoholics Anonymous, to the point of almost panic, at times feeling like I wanted to run out of AA, and it was step 8 and 9. It was too big. It was too much. And I listened to meetings, and there's a certain phase that some of us go through where we get real self-righteous. And I'd hear some of these self-righteous people in the meetings talk about, I paid back every single dime I ever owed. And I'd sit there and go, oh my God. I can't even imagine that. I stole as a way of life. I mean, there was years where it was rare if a day went by that I didn't steal something. One of the things I did for about a couple years, I did this daily, a couple times a day, is I had this scam that I did where I was, on the streets pretty much. I had long hair and a long beard, and you didn't want me in your establishment. And so I'd go into your restaurant or your bar or your gas station, and I'd go up to your cigarette machine. And nobody's looking. I'd pretend like I'm putting money in the cigarette machine, and then I'd go crazy and start ranting and raving, screaming, banging on the cigarette machine. This ripped me off. And I'd do that until the manager would come and open up the machine and give me a pack of cigarettes, and I'd go on. I did that often, twice daily, sometimes more. I lived on the streets, and I walked the streets, and I stole whatever was available. If you left your car unlocked and there was something in there that had that I could sell or trade or I would take it. Not personal. I was the guy in the bars. I did this a lot. I got that phenomenon of craving really bad, and I'd go into a bar and I'd start drinking, and then I'd run out of money. But the thing's on me. I want another drink. And so what would happen is that if you went to the bathroom, I would drink your drink, take your change, and then move to another part of the bar. And I did that a lot. And when you're not drunk, you kind of can pull it off. You can look innocent. But I'd get sloppy drunk and get caught, right? And I used to get thrown out of bars and, oh, God, in being humiliated, embarrassed. And there was a couple guys that ended up inadvertently doing time because of something I did. There was one guy, I've not found him to this day, who in a blackout, he was my best friend. At one time, in a blackout, I took a big hunting knife called a buffalo skinner with a blade about this long, and I opened up his chest. I've messed him up pretty good. Almost died. And I've never found him to this day, and I have searched, I have looked. And I had a mother and father that, God, I used to try to find stuff wrong with them, but the real truth is they were just good people and they loved me. And I just seemed to punish them for it. I tried to tell myself that they didn't understand, and I tried to tell myself they smothered me as a kid. I tried to tell myself I always was looking for something to, they won't bail me out of jail anymore, and they don't care. But the truth was I had squandered their money so much. My parents put me in a lot of treatment centers, and they paid for a lot of attorneys, and they paid for a lot of psychiatrists, and a lot of medications, and a lot of stuff. And the more they put me in one treatment center that objectively, the price of what it cost them to put me through there could have bought them a nice little house somewhere in some little community. And the more they tried to help me, it seemed like the sicker I got. And I stole from them, I robbed them, I lied to them, I disappointed them. And one of the worst things I did is I'd get their hopes up because I get sober again. I get so beaten up. I get sober again. And then they get their hopes up that because I can sound sincere. I just can't act it. And I'd sound sincere and they'd get their hopes up because they love me. And then I'd dash their hopes one more time. And I didn't do that to once or twice. I did that over. You know, what a battering, what a brutal battering to receive from someone you love. I stole so much from my parents that there was only one pawn shop in the town we lived in, Reading, and my dad became friends with the guy who owned the pawn shop from buying his own stuff back. And then the guy cut me off. And when I sit in meetings and people start talking about amends, it's so overwhelming to me that I want to bolt out of here. But there's a power in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's been here from the beginning. It's a power that seems to facilitate change. It's a power that makes the impossible just take a little bit longer. It's a power that does for us what we can't do for ourselves. Carl Jung used to refer to it. He was the first one, I think, that ever used the term. He used to call it he said it was the universe of synchronicity. In other words, it's a universe that will change form and shape and alter itself to facilitate the changes you need to make and the things you need to do. Can't do them right now. It's possible. The gap's too big. But from the moment of the desire, the universe starts massaging itself, and what eventually becomes possible at one time was impossible. And I guess there is a connected... When it says in our book that God is either everything or he's nothing, that's almost Buddhist or Hindu in nature, that statement. I think there's a connectivity here. I'm amazed what a friendly, accommodating universe this is. How if I abandon myself and just try to help, how everything I need is brought to me without any effort on my part. Just comes. Just comes. It's amazing. And so I get sober and they start hammering me about one of the bad things about getting a sponsor in a home group is you're opening the door for people to butt into your business. And they do. Oh, they do. They always ask those little questions. So, how long has it been since you saw your mom and dad? Oh, I don't know, 3 years, more maybe. Really? Oh, so you haven't made amends yet to them? Yeah, sure. Well, you need to make amends. It's too late. Maybe a couple years ago, maybe before I threatened my dad's life and smashed that chair over the kitchen counter, trying to swing it at him. Maybe before I stole my mother's mother's silver set and sold it. Maybe before I broke their heart for the 70th time, maybe. But it's too late. They won't have anything to do with me. Well, call them. Start calling them every week. Call your mom and dad every week. You don't understand. They won't take the calls. You know what they said to me? They said, don't call, collect. I would have never thought of that. Isn't that, it's so bizarre looking back at myself then. I was so selfish with such a self-seeking, selfish sense of entitlement that it would never occur to me to call my parents and me pay for the call like everybody else in the universe. That I would, and they said, pay for the call. I thought, wow. Well, it still won't do any good. Just call her. You pay for the call. Remember the first time I did it? My mother answers the phone, and when she hears my voice, she gets very agitated. What do you want? Then she gets panicky. She said, "Oh my God, you're back in Pennsylvania again?" I said, "No, Mom, I'm in Nevada." She said, "Well, the operator didn't ask me to pay for the call." I said, "No, Mom, I paid for the call." It was like she was astounded. She went, "You paid for the call?" I mean, she couldn't believe it. It was so out of character for me. I mean, it was so pathetic. I'll tell you, here's how selfish and pathetic I am. For years, I never bought them a present. Even at Christmas. Here's what happened at Christmas. My parents were they were like Al-Anons, I guess. Christmas had come. I don't have any money. Every dime I get, I spend on getting high. I mean, I'm broke all the time. And so Christmas comes. My mother buys me a present to give to my father, and my father buys me a present to give to my mother. I never bought them a present in my life. That's pathetic, really. They spent a fortune on me. I'm so selfish that they buy the presents I give each other. That's unbelievable. So they told me, they said, not only do you have to call every week, but you have to start sending them something, send them a little something, Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthday, anniversary, Christmas. Well, I'm newly sober. My first job was, my first couple jobs, minimum wage. And I'm struggling here financially. Paycheck to paycheck. I remember the first Christmas. People in AA tell me I got to get them something for Christmas. Oh, God. I get my mom some little thing. I get my dad. I owed my dad so much money. The best I could do was I got him this necktie. It was probably $8 or $9 necktie. It was like, it was pathetic. I mean, if I got my father a brand new Bentley in a beach house, it wouldn't touch how far behind I am with him. And I'm going to give him a necktie. Oh, this is awful. I didn't want to do it. I did not want to do it, but people in AA made me. He made me do it. Send that to my dad. Send it a week or so before Christmas. Next time I called that after they got it, my dad would never talk to me and get on the phone. I would always call and he'd be busy, or he didn't want to. He'd just say, my mom would say, "Oh, he just said to say hi." He wouldn't get on the phone. After I sent him that necktie, he got on the phone. For a moment, the wall came down. For a moment. He could almost not talk. He said, "Thank you." Then he had to get off the phone. I had hurt him deeply. Deeply. And I kept it up. Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, their anniversary, both their birthdays. And when I was about a year sober, I've been calling them every week, and they're still very like this with me, and rightly so. I mean, if you've been lied to and disappointed and conned as frequently for so long as they had been by me, they should have been very skeptical and guarded about me. And I was a year sober, and they decided to come to Las Vegas and eyeball me. They came out there. It's not a family reunion. This is more like we think he's a bum trying to con us, but we're going to go out and look and see. And if he's a con man, it's like he always was. Hey, we've never been to Vegas. It's not a total loss. That's exactly the way they came to Las Vegas, and I met him at the airport and I took him out to dinner with my sponsor and his wife, and my sponsor suggested that I brought them to my home group. Now, my home group at that time it was really a very strong group. A lot of old timers, a lot of new guys, a lot of middle people, and we met in people's homes and people that had big houses. So there's a lot of successful people that were members of my home group, and there'd be like 50 of us in the living room somewhere. We'd have chairs that would travel from every month. A different member would take the meeting in their house, and I was to get there early, and there's a lot of camaraderie. And in my home group, the old timers would pick on the newer people and make fun of them. If I hope that in your home group there's a lot of that laughter. I hope there's a lot of that needling each. It's a great thing. And then the people that are sober, like I was about a year at the time, I'd start picking on the people that I was working with and the newer people, because AA functions on the first rule of plumbing, that crap runs downhill. And, the old-timers pick on us, we pick on them. It's like that. It's just fun. And my mom and dad came to that meeting, and they got to see that camaraderie and that joy, and that they saw that this wasn't the depressive, serious, self-righteous, mopey group that they suspected it would be. And they laughed a lot, because there was a lot of humor in my old home group, and there was a lot of genuineness. I remember someone in the meeting was getting very emotional, because they were talking about how they finally had got their kids back. And I remember hearing my mom lean over and say to my dad, "This is good." And I don't know that they understood it, but they saw me with you. And I've never been better than when I'm with you. What a brilliant idea that was on the part of my sponsor, to bring them to a meeting, to my home group. I wouldn't have thought of that. I think somewhere inside of me unconsciously, I was a little bit ashamed in front of my parents that I had to go to AA. I think that I always wanted to impress my dad. I always wanted his approval. I always kind of felt like I should have straightened out on my own. And they saw me, and I was instructed to sit down and to figure out the best of my ability how much money I owed my dad, and then I was supposed to present it to him, ask him if there was anything that I missed, and then come up with a game plan of payments. And I did that, and without adding anything else on, it was unbelievable. It was a lot of money. It was years of fines where I had to borrow the money, and rent where I drank it away, and just on. And it was like 12 and a half years of payments. I got to tell you, when you're a year sober, that's a lifetime. It's unbelievable. I don't want to do that. And people in AA told me I had to do it like this. I had to make these payments. Now, everybody turn and look at him. Okay, he suffered enough. All right. So, I'm going into the coffee shop at the Stardust Hotel where they're staying, and I meet him in there, and I have my paper all set with all the page full of the money that I owed my dad. I presented it to him with the game plan of 12 and a half years of payments. And my dad says, "Well, Rob, we don't want you to pay back the money. We are just delighted you're doing well. This is the first time in years we had any hope that you're going to be okay, and just keep doing what you're doing, and it's fine. Don't worry about the money." Well, I just hit the recovery lottery. I mean, I just got out of 12 and a half years of payments. This is amazing. And I just started really warming up to this amends thing. I thought, this amends is good. I like amends. And I left there, and I'm excited, man. I'm like up here. I'm elated. I'm on my way to my sponsor's office to tell him the good news. Sort of mentally going over other people I owed. I wonder if they'd see the light like my parents did. Get to my sponsor's office. I go in, I tell him the good news. I did exactly what you said. And my dad said I didn't have to pay it. Isn't this amazing? And my sponsor looks at me and he says, "It doesn't matter what your dad said. This is your debt. This is your recovery. This is your integrity. You have to find a way to pay that back." And there are times when you know you got the wrong sponsor, I'll tell you. Oh, man, I don't know what to do. I said, "Listen, if I send him a little check every month, he probably won't even cash it. I don't know what to do." And he said something, he said a lot. He just said, "I don't know, but a way will be shown." I don't know what the hell that means. I don't know. But he was right. The universe accommodates all desires if they're positive and they're useful to others. And I worked as a cashier in a store, and in that business back in the 70s and 80s, there was still a lot of real solid silver coins in circulation. And there were silver certificates and gold certificates, and we had these old wheat pennies and these war nickels that were part silver. My dad collected all that stuff. Now, they'd taken most of it out of circulation, but there's still a lot. Every day, some of that stuff would come through that register. And I thought, well, my dad's really into this. Maybe I could buy enough of this, buy a bunch of it for a while from the register. I'll ask my boss, and if maybe I could save up enough to. I never considered paying the debt. I just thought I'd save up enough to give my dad a really nice present one day. And I started doing that. And I'll tell you, it was a funny thing. I'm doing that. I'm chipping away at a couple other little amends, and it was as if I started getting lucky financially. I mean, from the moment I started down that road, it seemed like the universe was facilitating making this right somehow. I started getting bonuses, and I started getting raises, and I got a better job in retail, and I was able to do the same thing at the other job, and it was amazing. There was a guy in AA that had a moving van, and he was a private mover, and he used to try to schedule his moving deals around times when I was off. He paid me $100 cash for a couple hours moving furniture. And in about maybe 4.5 years, it was amazing. I started counting. I accumulated at face value the whole debt. It was unbelievable. I had bags full of silver quarters and silver dollars and half dollars and dimes, and a big thing of war nickels, and 2 big bags of wheat pennies, and I had a shoebox full of bills, gold certificates and silver certificates, and quite a few $100 gold certificates, and one $500. The guy down at the Horseshoe called me up. This gal in AA called me up and said, "We got a $500 gold certificate in there. I know you're collecting this stuff for your dad. Do you want it?" And I said, "How can you hold it for me?" She said, "I can only hold it till tomorrow." And I went and borrowed the money, and so I could go down there and buy that $500 bill off that cage, so I could put it and give it. And I gave all that stuff to I drove back to Pennsylvania with all this stuff in the car with Karen, who was, we weren't married at the time, but she was going to become my wife, and right before we got married, and she was the mother of my daughter. And we drove back to Pennsylvania. I gave my dad all that stuff. It blew his mind. It blew his mind. He never expected it. And I'll tell you, something shifted in the world when I did that. It seemed like, as a result of those actions, that for the first time in my life, my dad started to respect me. And I knew he loved me, and I knew he'd forgiven me, and we had developed a relationship. But I never felt that he respected me. Now, I don't know objectively if that's coming from me or if it's coming from him or if it's a combination of both. But I'll tell you something, I know, like I'm sitting here, that it changed. My experience with my father changed when I gave him that money. It was like I became a man in his eyes that day. And we developed an amazing relationship, and it was very sweet. And unfortunately he died about a year later. And I was sad, but I was grateful that I had that year. I was grateful that everything that you told me to do in AA that I'd done. I was grateful that I could bury my father, and I wasn't haunted by the ghosts of "I wish I wouldn't have," or the ghosts of "why hadn't I," or the ghosts of "I didn't even tell him I loved him." There was no unfinished business with me and my dad. And I got to do this, I got to make some amends to my mother, and it came up later. When I was 17, after my dad died, my mom, it's so funny, she thought she was alone. She was very lonely when my dad died. And we used to talk on the phone a lot. We started getting really close. And I was sort of like the pillar of the family at this point. I was the one she turned to for when she wanted to talk and she needed help. And someone came along and offered her more money for her house than it was worth, and she didn't even put it on the market. It was the weirdest thing. And she sold her house and she moved to Las Vegas. And she came out there. She wasn't out there very long. And I introduced her to a guy who's her age, who I got sober with in 1978, a guy named George. Nice guy. Did a lot of AA. George is a very good member of AA. No time at all. They're living in sin. Oh, drove my sister nuts. But I liked it. I liked it because George went to a lot of meetings and my mom would just go along. She'd just go. I was just talking with Craig about this because he remembers this. My mom would go to meetings with George, and George went to a lot of meetings. So I had a mom who's not an alcoholic, but she tags along to open meetings. She eventually got on the board of one of the clubs, and she'd just like to sit and talk and help guys' parents, share her experience, what she went through with me. And it was like having a mom in AA. It was very cool. I get to say to guys I sponsor, my mom goes to more AA meetings than you do, and she's not even an alcoholic. I used to love saying that to guys. I'd say that to guys all the time. I just love saying that to guys. And it was the sweetest years of my life with my mother. And I got to do a lot of very cool stuff with her and George. And then my sister ended up being married to an alcoholic. Who'd have thought? And she divorced him, and she moved to Las Vegas, and there's my whole family is there with me in Vegas. You can run away from home, I'm telling you, they find you. And my sister's there with me to this day, and it's been good. When I was 17 years sober, my mom developed terminal cancer and emphysema from smoking, and I started to take care of her. And it was hard, but I'm grateful to have been able to do it. And there were moments in there where I woke to stuff that was so amazing. I was taking care of my mom one time, and I just started choking up because I remembered when I was a little kid, I was asthmatic, and I used to get really sick. I mean, really sick, and my mom would never leave my side. She'd sit there and take care of me while I was sick, 24/7. And it's oddly enough, when I got to be about 13 years old, and I discovered alcohol and cigarettes, the asthma went away, never came back. Now, I'm not saying that's a cure. That's a true story. But when I was a kid, she'd take care of me. And I'm taking care of her, but I can't be there all the time. I have a business to run, and I have a family, and I didn't know what to do, I told her one day that I'm really sorry. I wish my life wasn't so demanding. I could spend more time here. I told her at one point, I said, I don't even know if I ever thanked you for all your self-sacrifice when I was little. See, I don't think amends is just about addressing the things you did wrong. I think in my selfishness and self-absorption that I just disregard and I'm too selfish to even thank the people that were nice to me and helped me along the way. I realized I'd never thanked my mother for all the things she did, and I started to thank her, and I took care of her. I told her that I was sorry I couldn't be there more. She just smiled at me, and she says, "I'm so proud of you. You have a good life. I wouldn't have it any other way." And she died. Of course she did. And it was sad. She was 50 pounds when she died. I used to come in to change her bedding and her diapers and try to feed her. She couldn't eat. I tell you, I could just pick her up off the bed. This was a very proud woman one time. I could just lift her right up. It was like nothing. I don't know how you could waste away to that much, but she did. And then she eventually died, and it was sad. And I was grateful to feel that. I've been grateful to mourn both my parents because they both deserved it. They both deserved it. And all because of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll tell you one more amends story. One of the worst things, it's really hard, is when you make amends for the jerk you were when you were drinking and doing drugs. That's not that bad, because you get to hang it all on the hook of, hey, I was messed up, right? But what do you do about the stuff that you did at a couple years sober as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous? And one of the things that I did sober, and it snuck up on me. I was at work one day, and I had a bad cigarette habit back in those days. I was smoking probably close to 3 packs a day. I was a guy that would light a cigarette off a cigarette sometimes, And I was at work one day, and I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and it's a Thursday afternoon, and I ran out of cigarettes, and I am broke until tomorrow when I get my paycheck. And one of the things we sold in the store was cigarettes. So I thought, well, I'll take a pack, and then tomorrow when I get my paycheck, we cash the paychecks out of the bank, I'll ring it up. It seemed like a reason. It's not really stealing. I'm deferring the payment for just 20 hours maybe. Reasonable thought. The next day comes, I get my paycheck, I cash it, I got the money in my hand. The thought goes through my mind, you got to ring those cigarettes up. And then this other voice comes in. And this is, did you ever notice how this voice is more reasonable than the AA voices? Did you ever know? It's a very seductive, reasonable voice. And it says to me, Bob, you come to work early. You stay late. You really work harder than anybody else here. It's only a pack of cigarettes, for God's sakes. Everybody does some of this. I bet you it's factored into the cost of operation. And I never rang those cigarettes up, and I kept a door open, and I started taking cigarettes and supporting a close to 3-pack-a-day habit by stealing cigarettes from where I worked. And in no time at all, I was not only stealing cigarettes, I was getting a 6-pack of Diet Coke once in a while, because once you start stealing, what the heck, And it's funny, I started to get sick, but I don't know it. In the realm of the spirit, sometimes it's a hard thing to connect, because you do something over here that's out of line, and sometimes you don't get sick over here right away. Sometimes you get sick over there, and then you get sick over there, and other areas of your life start falling apart, and you don't connect the dots. And that happened to me right away. I started having a tough time going to meetings. I didn't want to go to meetings. It seemed to me everybody in AA is phony. Everybody's phony here. All this rigorous, I don't believe any of you. I just sit there and judge you. You're not all that. I just critical. I was dating a girl, started just to notice how, I don't know, I didn't like her anymore. She was just, I don't know. And then it came eventually back to my boss, and I started picking the company I worked for apart, and I started picking my boss apart. And my boss was a good guy. I mean, he'd always treated me very, very well. But you know how we are. You can find something wrong with anybody if you need to. And I started looking at him like that to find stuff wrong with him. And I'm getting sicker and sicker. And in the store I worked in, we sold liquor. We sold a lot of stuff, but we sold liquor. And it had never been a problem. That promise in the book, I was astounded when I went to, I was a year sober when I went to work there. I was astounded that I could work around alcohol. I was afraid, but I took that job because I didn't have any other alternative. I was going to be homeless. And I was amazed that what it says in the book had actually come true. I was in a position of neutrality. To me, it was like selling shoes. It really wasn't a problem. I was amazed. I thought, AA really works. And then as I started to get sick spiritually from this living the double life that it talks about, I have the stage character, and then I know I'm really a liar, a cheat, and a thief. And I started to get sick. And I was at work one day, and one of the regular customers comes in, is a young guy, about my age. And he's very excited. He goes, "Oh my God, you got it in. I've been waiting for this. And I don't know what he's talking about. At first, he says, give me a bottle of that, man. This stuff, you ever had this stuff? Oh, he said, this is like opium and cocaine and alcohol all together. Something called, I'd never heard of it, called Jägermeister. I'd never heard of it. But he's talking about it. And as he's saying, it's like alcohol, cocaine, and opium all together. The voice in my head looked at it and went, really? And I'd lost the position of neutrality from the alcohol. All of a sudden, on an unconscious level, because I'm getting sick, this is starting to look like it's some kind of powerful medicine because I'm getting sick. See, if you're not sick, you don't need medicine. But if you start getting sick, it starts looking like medicine again. Now, I didn't drink. Didn't run off, didn't get obsessed with drinking, but it was a creepy little repositioning that was very, very dangerous for me. And I pushed that out of my mind. But I got to tell you something. I think that when you have to start using self-will to fight thoughts of alcohol, you're in trouble. And right after that, not too long after that, I'm at home at night. And I've been conditioned, and I had the habit of getting down on my knees before I went to bed and thanking God for that day of sobriety. And I got down on my knees, and I'm thanking God, and I just yell. I'm a mess, and I'm scared. And I just yelled out, God, what the hell's going on? The moment I asked the question, I intuitively knew the answer. I knew why I'm on this slippery slope that eventually will probably end up with me drinking again is because I'm living the double life. And I thought, oh my God, I got to make this right. I was scared. I was afraid if I didn't make it right, I wasn't going to stay sober. And I started figuring it out. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've been stealing for a long time. And I don't have the money to make this right. It's quite a bit, actually. And I'm going to have to go to my boss and tell him what I did, and he has zero tolerance for that. I know he's going to fire me. And then I got to have to go get another job. Now I got another blank spot in my resume. I got a few of them. And I'm going to have to go somewhere else, and I'm going to have to try to get another job, and then I have to make payments to him. And the worst part of all is the guy I have to go face has heard me prattle on a couple occasions about my rigorous program of honesty. I'll tell you something. Listen, if you ever are around somebody in AA that goes out of their way to tell you how honest they are, run. You know, the people I know to really be honest, they'll tell you the truth. The truth is, if they get scared enough, they're capable of lying to you. They may have to make amends, but they're capable. And I had to go face this guy. It was frightening to me. I just didn't want to do it. I'm so scared. And I remember I kind of started the conversation with him. And it was like he wasn't quite listening at first. And then he got to what I was saying, that I'd been stealing from him. And he went off on me. He just started yelling at me, and he got hurt. He'd been very good to me. And when he found out I was stealing from him, and I said, I'll make it right, I'll pay it back, and he's yelling at me, telling me what I am, and I can't argue with what he's saying. It's right. And then when he stopped yelling at me, I realized he hadn't fired me, and so I said, do I still have a job? Which I didn't. I wished I regretted it because he started yelling at me again. Yeah, you have a job, but you're going to pay back every bit, He went off on me again. And he didn't fire me. I was astounded. And so I figured out to the best of my ability what I had taken. I added on 10% because just in case I missed the amount, and I added on another $50. And I did this because I'd rather overpay it. And besides, I know me. if I'm going to misjudge the number, it's not going to be in his favor. You know what I'm saying? I'm just wired that way. I used to we used to buy a pound of pot, I'll divide. You know, oh yeah, right, you let me divide, you're going to get the short end. And that's just intuitive in me. And so I added 10%, another $50, and I started making the payments. The book says we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. Somewhere down the line making those payments, and I started really feeling good about working there. I mean, really feeling good about it. I remember thinking to myself, I think I could work here the rest of my life. I like the customers. I like the people I work with. I feel useful here. I come to work. I do something useful. I'm helpful to people. I wait on them. I like this. And I finally made the last payment, and within 30 days of the last payment, I am not looking for another job. I'm very happy where I am. A guy came to me with an offer to work in a bigger store for about potentially twice as much money. And it was an offer I couldn't refuse. I went to my boss and I told him what the guy offered me. And he said, well, I'm not in a position to offer you anything like that right now. I think you should take it. It's a pretty good deal. And I stayed there for a couple weeks till he got a replacement for me. And I went to work at that other place, and I never stole a dime from them, never even took a ballpoint pen home. And I gave that man a nickel I gave him a dime for his nickel every day. And I was practicing now, and I'd been for a little while, what I learned from Chuck Chamberlain. Chuck had told me that I needed to go to work for one reason and one reason only, and that was to help God's kids. And I should forget myself and what I get paid and how much I'm appreciated. Just go to work for one reason only, and that's to be helpful. I started doing that, and I became very successful there. And no time at all, I'm running that place, and I'm making a lot more money. It's facilitating a lot of my amends and bonuses. And I'm in a Denny's restaurant one night, and I see the guy that I'd worked for, stole from, and paid back, sitting in a booth with his wife. And I go up to him, because we're good friends. I went up to him and I said, hey, how you doing? And he said, I'm kind of down. I said, oh yeah, what's going on? He said, did you hear I was selling my store? I said, I heard that. I said, how's that going? He said, it blew up on me. The guy was from Korea, and he had to go past the Nevada Gaming Control Board and Liquor Control Board investigations. They're very intense, and he wouldn't pass, and they revoked his temporary license, and they won't give him a license, and I got it back in my lap, and now I'm back in. I don't get to retire. I was kind of burnt out, hoping I would, but I guess it's not in the cards. And I heard myself say to him, I was embarrassed I said it, I don't know where it came from. I said, God, I'd like to buy your store. The minute I said I was embarrassed, I said, yeah, I'm just kidding. I don't have any money. I just wished I wouldn't have said it. I felt stupid saying it. And he said to me, what's your day off? And I told him, he said, why don't you meet me down here at Denny's and have lunch? I said, okay. And I meet him. I remember it like it was yesterday. He was sitting in a booth, had one of those manila folders with papers in it. I walked in, I sat down, and he started telling me about it. He'd like to make me an offer. He told me that if I came back to work for him, and he said the store's been run down, it's in the red now. The guy ran it into the ground. He said, but if you can get it back up and make it profitable, every year you'll earn a piece of it. And after 5 years, he said, I'll be out of here. You'll still have to make some payments. You won't make them. The business will make them for fixtures and inventory, and it'll be yours. I couldn't believe it. I'm a guy, I got a resume that says stuff like runs a cash register, telemarketing, sells blood, washes dishes, drug dealer, and I was offered something that was amazing. And I said, I'd love to do that. And I started doing that, and I never looked back. And I bought him out, and I started buying properties and commercial properties and opening more and more stores. And it was an amazing journey. It was an exciting journey. And I got burnt out after a number of years, and I sold the company, retired pretty young, and I retired in a position where I didn't really have to worry too much about money. It doesn't mean I haven't worried about money. I didn't have to. I do it just to keep in practice, I think. I've been very well taken care of. Even when the economy did its thing, I still came through out the other side better than most people I know, and pretty comfortable, really. And God took care of me. When I retired and I sold that business, I thought, you know something? My heart's desire is I just want to do AA and help God's kids. I don't want to do anything the rest of my life that doesn't light me up and make me feel useful and bring me closer to God. And that's what I've done for the last quite a few years. I travel around. I play music. I'm a singer-songwriter. I went back to doing the thing that lit me up as a kid when I was a kid playing in bands. And my life is amazing today. And you know, I almost didn't make that amends. I had a conversation with that guy years later, and I said to him, I said, if I hadn't have stolen from you and made amends to you, would you have ever put me in the position to have your business? And he said, probably not. I said, isn't it weird that you would give that opportunity and trust the guy who stole from you? He said, oh, I knew you were capable of stealing. I just knew that you'd have to make amends if you did. And it was a great journey. I'll tell you one more thing, a story, and we'll end a little early. Oh, we're gonna have an Ask It basket for tomorrow. Did somebody sort that out? Huh? Okay. Yeah, if there's anything I've shared that you have, like amends, sponsee stuff, step stuff, I don't have answers, but I may have experience. And if you want to ask a question and I have experience that's helpful, I'd be glad to give it to you. You know, in this amends thing, we think it's all about us. Sometimes it's not about us at all. In all the years I was in business, I had a lot of people steal from me over the years. A lot of employees. I've had some that were brutal. I had one woman that managed one of my stores that I think low estimate, she took $250,000 from me. I couldn't catch her. I finally had to fire her because the numbers were so bad I was going to go under if I didn't fire her. I fired her, the numbers just instantly went back up again. And she went to work for my competition, and he did something I couldn't do. He caught her on film, stealing from me. And I never had anybody make an amends, and I had a lot. And I tell you, that's one of the reasons I eventually sold my business and retired young. I was tired. I was tired of it. I was tired of putting out the fires. I was tired of forgiving people. It just wore on me over the years. And one day I was sitting in my office, and this was towards the end, right? Not too long before I retired and sold my company. And a guy comes into my office, and he looked a little familiar. He says, can I talk to you? And I'm not sure who he is. He said, so-and-so, I used to work for you. And I'm still looking at him. I'm not sure if I remember him. I've had a lot of employees. And he said, when I worked here, I stole several $1,000s from you. Yeah. You too, huh? That's about where I was at, you know. And he said, I'm several months sober in AA. I go to meetings over. He told me the place he goes, and I haven't had a judgment about that type of recovery at that place. But I didn't say nothing. I just, yeah. And he says, I'm going to make this right. And he gave me two $100 bills. I said, yeah, thanks. And I just thought, I'll never see him again. He came back next week with two $100 bills. And the week after that with two $100 bills. And he never missed. He did what he said he was going to do. And I'll tell you something. You know, it says that we're amazed before we're halfway through. I never knew that the receiver was also amazed before you're halfway through. I'd sit in my office at a window. I'd see his car pull up. Hey, it's so-and-so. I was glad to see him. One time, I said, he was kind of in a hurry. I said, can you sit just for a second? Can I get you a cup of coffee, anything? He said, no, I kind of got to get doing something. I said, just give me a second. I said, I want you to know, if you ever need anything, if you never need a job again, I'd hire you in a second. If you ever need a reference, please use me. You've restored my faith in humanity. And he changed me. And I think we do that to people. They say that alcoholism, when it's practiced, negatively impacts a minimum of 10 people. Oh, a minimum. A minimum. All the employers I stole from, all the people I ripped off, all the hearts I broke. When I got sober, you couldn't find someone on the planet that had some good experience with me anymore. I can't imagine how many people I negatively affected, but I'll tell you something. I think a sober alcoholic, not just one who's not drinking and going to meetings, but a sober alcoholic who devotes himself to this life and meticulously sacrifices enough to go out there year after year and clean up this mess and pay those people back and devote themselves to helping others. I wonder how many people we positively affect. Dozens? Hundreds? How many? Because sometimes I've heard the stories of you make amends to someone and they're not even alcoholic, but they remember someone they owed money to and they go, oh, maybe I should go pay that person back. And it's like ripples in a pond. I heard a story years ago of this guy named Tom. He lives in California. And Tom worked as a burglar at night in a window washer and a window washer a day. Those go together very well. And so he'd wash the windows of some rich person's house and check it out and find out who was home, who wasn't home, and then he'd come back at night and burglarize the place. Well, he gets sober, and my friend Clint was his sponsor. And Clint, there's no negotiation with Clint. Clint was amazing. I missed him. He's been dead now for a long time. But Tom went to Clint, and Clint said, you got to go face all those people. He said, well, if I go to jail? I said, well, if you go to jail, you go to jail. You want to be free? Yeah. And he had a list of 13, I think it was 13 or 12 or 13 houses he burglarized around Pasadena, California, and he started. He'd go to the first house, he'd knock on the door, and he'd say, do you live here at such and such a time? And if they said yes, and were you burglarized? And they'd say yes, and he'd say, well, I'm the guy who did it, and here's some money, and I want to make this right, and if this isn't enough, I'll come back and make payments. And he just tried to set up some kind of deal. And he got through all the houses. Nobody turned him in. Nobody had him arrested. He got to the last house, and nobody was home, and he came back another time, nobody's home. And he kind of put it on the back burner, but Clint won't let him. Clint keeps bugging him. You got to go back. You got to go back. So he goes back. He knocks on the door, and this little man and woman answer the door, little old man and woman. And he said, did you live here at such and such a date? And they said, yes. And, were you burglarized? And he said, yes. And he said, well, I'm the one that did it, and I'm here to make this right and pay it back. And they looked at him and they said, really, come in, please, come in. And they bring him into the house, and as they're walking down the hallway, they're pointing to the mirror in the hallway and said, how come you smashed the mirror? And he said, well, I thought there might be a safe behind it. They take it into the living room, they sit down on the sofa, and above the fireplace is a big picture of it had been repaired of the father. And he said, how come you tore that off the wall? And he said, I thought also it might be a safe behind that. They went, okay. And he pulled an envelope with money out of his pocket, and had a pretty good job by now, and he slid the envelope across the table. And he says to them, here, I don't know if this is enough, but I want to make this right. And they slide the envelope back to him. And they said, we don't want your money. And he said, no, you don't understand. I have to make this right. And they said, no, you don't understand. You just did, because up until this moment, we thought it was our son that robbed us. And Tom said, and I thought it was about me. And it never was about me. You have no idea how many people you're going to affect. And Chamberlain used to rub his hands together, and he'd cackle with that little laugh, and he'd say, we rub away the wreckage of our past by good works. So, start rubbing. Thanks for listening. Don't forget the Ask It basket, and we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.